Okay, very last one. Yay! Okay, this is the epilogue, the source, and this is 6 weeks earlier than the last chapter. Isaac, windswept hair hanging in front of his glasses, inched his way across the ledge. He pressed his body against the flat sections of rock and gripped the rocks that jutted out. The waterfall roared and sprayed and crashed. His heart pounded furiously. He ignored it. He pressed his hand to the pocket of his pants and pressed in. The bag of dust was still there. He clutched at it, and his breath caught, and he closed his eyes briefly. He had almost killed once, hundreds of years ago. Now he knew what it was to take a life, to take 2 lives. He put his shaking hand back on the rock and continued his path. Audrey was almost dead now. He had pulled some of her power to kill, and it had weakened her more. Finally, he slipped behind the waterfall and stepped onto the cold, hard ledge. He pulled his wand out from the leg of his pants. Light. The tip of his wand lit up. He crossed to the east wall and found the inscription. Open. The door slid back and over. Isaac followed the narrow pathway as it made its twists and turns and descents. Every now and then he would pause and put his hand carefully on the pocket of his waistcoat to check his wife. Finally, he reached a cavern. It was small, with a waterfall in the west wall that fed into a pool. Isaac crouched down, reached into his pocket, and gently pulled his wife out. Her tiny chest rose and fell, but she didn't open her eyes. He placed her on his palms and put her in the pool so the water mostly covered her. Audrey, he whispered. The water warmed his hands. He shifted her to the one hand and gently stroked her body with the fingers of his other hand. She didn't stir. He continued to stroke her gently, washing her with the water of the pool. Finally, she moved a leg and murmured something. Darling. He pressed her body to his lips and kissed her gently. Darling. Her eyelashes rose and fell. He cradled her in his hands and looked up at the cavern ceiling. Exhaustion and relief washed over him, and he choked on a sob. He coughed and cleared his throat and looked down. Isaac. Audrey turned her head to the side and swept her tiny hand across his palm. You saved me. Quite the turnaround, don't you think? He adjusted his glasses. How do you feel? Isaac rubbed her back with his pinky finger. Much better. She hugged his finger. How are you? I'm well. You are exhausted. She raised her eyebrows and tapped her tiny foot against his palm. You are tickling me, he laughed in a breathy, tired way. Audrey ran up his hand and arm, jumped upon and ran across his glasses and leapt into his thick hair. I had forgotten about this part of you, he confessed. Maybe this is where Charlotte got it from. Oh, our dear daughter. Audrey sat down in Isaac's hair and rubbed his head. I remember everything up until the chimeras and fighting for my life. She pressed her lips together. What have I missed? She climbed down and sat onto his shoulder. He told her everything she had missed before and after the chimeras. They sat there quietly for a few moments afterwards. Outside it would be dark and colder now. Isaac wondered if he could risk sleeping here tonight. His shoulders slumped and he put his head in his hands. Audrey placed her hand on his shoulder. Isaac lifted his head. She was full size. Her power was replenished. You need rest. She slowly ran her fingers through his hair. And a bath. Did you bring your bag? He nodded. And I left a copy with Charlotte like we planned. Audrey sighed. This isn't quite how we planned it, but it'll have to work. It's time. Isaac nodded. That it is. He stretched and pulled his shirt off. How many years has it been and I still blush, Audrey whispered. Isaac hummed to laugh. You stay out of the pool while I wash. I'm too old to father another child. You are far from too old, Audrey argued, but she crossed her arms and crossed the other side of the room. Now was not the time for babies. War was breaking out on the horizon. She watched instead and didn't feel the least bit guilty that Isaac was covered in a blush by the time he was done washing. He nodded toward the pool as he dried off. Your turn. Her eyes widened and she giggled. You held me in there earlier. I've already had my turn. He smirked. Then call it my turn. Get undressed and get in. Isaac. Audrey. He waved his hand. Get in before I toss you in. She huffed and tossed her clothing at him. She was blushing before she hit the water. Isaac's stare was unwavering as he put up a protection spell in the room and unpacked bedding for them. She washed slowly and dried off twice. He was waiting for her in the bed when she finished, his glasses tucked away on the bag and his head propped up in his hand. She crawled into the blankets and tucked herself against him. So tomorrow, she traced her fingers across his arm. Tomorrow we speak of tomorrow. He tucked her in tighter against his chest. Tonight I will hold you. Tonight we don't need words. And that's it, guys. It's all done. Thank you, guys. And I hope if anybody is wanting a version of it this way, that this helps you. Have a great day, guys. Bye.